Can you believe it's Thursday already? I can't. Anyway, guys, it has been a very, very, very difficult week for us here in Israel. And it's such a pleasure to join you every Monday to Thursday to take a look at those top stories. And I just want to thank you all for the incredible messages of support that you have sent through following the just shattering day yesterday as we laid Shiri Ariel and baby Kfir Bibas to rest. It means the world to us in Israel that we have so many incredible supporters around the world. And on days like yesterday, where our hearts are absolutely shattered, it is your love, your prayers that are holding us up. And you won't find a better community than right here at the Israel Brief. So if you are joining us for the first time, welcome to it. I'm Rolene Marks. This is the Israel Brief, your one-stop shop for all the top stories making headlines in Israel. The headlines and the stories you're not going to see in your media. As always, the Israel Brief is brought to you in partnership with these guys, Lay of the Land, and they put out a weekly newsletter. So if you want to receive the newsletter with articles and the week's editions of the Israel Brief, please be in touch via the website. Those details coming up a little later. Of course, it's Thursday, so today we will find out who your mensch and your moron of the week is. And this week we've got multiples for both. But first things first, it is day 510 since that horrific attack on the 7th of October, where over 1,200 people were murdered, mutilated, tortured, and raped by Hamas and other terror groups. And also what many people don't talk about are the civilians that also came through from the Gaza Strip and committed atrocities. We still have 59 hostages in captivities. We want them all home now. The living, that we can start the long process of recovery, and the dead, that we can lay them to eternal rest. So let's take a look at the top stories. And Israel received in the early hours of the morning the remains of 4 hostages whose bodies were kept by Hamas in captivity. We received Itzik El-Garat and Ohad Yahalomi from Kibbutz Nir Oz. We received Shlomo Mansour, the oldest of all the hostages, at 85 from Kibbutz Kisufim, and Tzachi Idan from Kibbutz Nachal Oz. Now, if you recall, just a few weeks ago, we announced that it had been confirmed that Shlomo Mansour had been killed on the 7th of October and his body taken in to Gaza. Now, upon arrival, the coffins were taken by police escort to Abu Kabir, to the National Forensic Institute, to make sure that their identities were, in fact, the identities of the men. Remember that horrific incident last week when we thought that the body of the late Shiri Bibas had been returned, only for it to be of an anonymous Palestinian woman. And more about her coming up a little later in the audience question portion. Now, as some of you might recall, Tzachi Idan, on the 7th of October, Hamas filmed themselves and uploaded to social media them killing Tzachi's oldest daughter, Ma'ayan, who was killed in front of Tzachi, his wife, and her 2 siblings, and the sheer terror on the faces of the little ones, and then them being taken captive into the Gaza Strip. Now, the Idan family said that they had received signs of life over his time in captivity, only for the horrific news to be confirmed that he was murdered in captivity, along with Ohad Yahalomi and Itzik El-Garat. Now, some of you might recall on day 360, I visited Kibbutz Nir Oz, and I filmed Ohad's remarkable wife, now widow, Batsheva Yahalomi, speaking, telling the family story, what happened that day. If you want to go back to previous Israel Briefs. Her story is up there. She's a remarkable, remarkable woman. If you recall, their son was also taken captive. He was held captive by civilians and UNRWA workers in the Gaza Strip. He was held in solitary, and he spoke about being forced to watch footage of the October the 7th atrocities. He had been burnt on his leg, and from the stress, he doesn't want to go to sleep anymore, and his hair is falling out. Our hearts shatter for these families. And, you know, over the last week or so, Israelis have been saying to each other, how much more do we have to take? How much more do we have to take? Where is that wake-up point for the world? As I said to you this week, I said, we are at a tipping point where you are either with the forces of evil or the people of light. Make a choice. Make a choice. Israel then handed over the Palestinian prisoners that were set to be released over the weekend. However, Israel kept them back, delayed the release due to the horrific ceremonies of the grotesque that occur when Hamas release hostages. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister has dispatched a negotiating team to Cairo, and we are not clear exactly what their mandate is. We are at the end of the first phase of the ceasefire. We have received all the hostages that were promised to us. We still have hostages that are alive. We want them back now. And of course, we still have to finalize those negotiations for the second phase. Meanwhile, our army is on high alert and stationed around the border of the Gaza Strip. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has been speaking to a conference hosted by US financial group Goldman Sachs. At the conference, he said that he wanted to strike a deal with President Trump over President Trump's withholding funds as a result of South Africa's case against the State of Israel at the International Court of Justice. South Africa, whose government is sympathetic not just to the Palestinians but to Hamas, filed a case accusing Israel of genocide at the International Court of Justice. Now, President Trump has withheld financial aid to South Africa, and this could also impact on South Africa's AGOA treaty with the United States. Ramaphosa says he is waiting for the dust to settle, and his long-term goal is repairing relations with the United States. But President Trump sees this kind of action taken against Israel as an attack on his greatest ally and will not stand for it. Now, the president's words come shortly after he had a op-ed co-authored by Malaysian and Colombian officials in Foreign Policy magazine. This is part of their newly formed The Hague Group to try and push these arrest warrants through on Netanyahu and former Minister Gallant. And he says in his article that he will most certainly push and to arrest Prime Minister Netanyahu and former Minister Gallant, and also condemned President Trump for his sanctions against the International Criminal Court. Now, it's going to be very interesting to see how President Trump responds to that when he is saying that now he wants to repair relations with the US. You really cannot make this up. Meanwhile, the ICC have withdrawn their arrest warrant for Hamas leader Mohammed Deif, which would have been quite difficult seeing that he is deceased. Israel has said that we have no intention of withdrawing from the Philadelphia corridor. The Philadelphia corridor forms a very important buffer zone between the Gaza Strip and Egypt. Israeli troops will be stationed there. Israel says we have no intention of seeing Hamas be able to smuggle arms through the Philadelphia corridor and drive up and down with rifles and trucks, rearm and commit attacks against Israeli soldiers and civilians. We will not allow Hamas to rebuild through smuggling. And finally, cities around the world have been lighting up for the Bibas family. This is since last week's horrific and shattering news that Shiri, Kfir and Ariel were murdered in Hamas captivity. Cities like the New York lit up the Empire State Building, the US side of Niagara Falls were lit up, Berlin lit up, Frankfurt, Madrid, Buenos Aires, Rio, Budapest, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Paris lit up the Eiffel Tower, the buildings of the National Assembly, Athens, Rome, so many around the world. Jerusalem, of course, Israel lighting up our Knesset building, air traffic control, the president's residence, Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, all over the country lit up in orange for the Bibas family. But somebody forgot to light up for the Bibas family, but lit up for Ramadan, and who it is the subject of one of our morons of the week. So before we get to that, let's take the audience question, and it comes from Susan, who asks, was the lady that was put in the coffin in place of Shiri Bibas handed back to Hamas? Yes, she was. The short answer is yes, she was. But I think let's spare a thought for her that Hamas cared so little for their own people that they were prepared to put just a random woman with no name, no idea who she was, completely anonymous, in the coffin to torture the Bibas family and Israel even more. And finally, let's get on to those Mentches and morons. Let's first do the morons. So we have two morons of the week. One is Rima Hassan. Rima is a Belgian MP who was put on a plane back to Belgium as she flew here earlier this week. She is known to be very sympathetic to Hamas, calling them a resistance movement. She has spouted her anti-Semitic rhetoric. What she hoped to achieve by coming to Israel is beyond us, and she was promptly put on a plane and sent back. As someone said to me, pity she wasn't put on her broomstick and sent back. And the other moron of the week is London Mayor Sadiq Khan. I have been very moved to see so many people across the United Kingdom saying that all these cities are lighting up for the Bibas family, but nothing from Sadiq Khan, who instead lit up London for Ramadan. And let's take a look at our Mentches of the week, and we have two. Number one is the newly appointed American ambassador to the United Nations, Elise Stefanik, who takes no prisoners and who is a vocal supporter of Israel. You will remember Elise from her clamping down on university presidents when they had those hearings last year. She is a lioness and we adore her. And the other is, which I think is lovely, Rob Schilling, host of the Schilling Show on WINA. I am the Israel correspondent there. And Linda Kruger says, Rolene, I nominate Rob Schilling for being a Mensch of the Week, for giving you the opportunity to speak on behalf of Israel. So, Rob, I hope you're listening. You're one of our Menches of the Week. So shoot me a message if you picked this up. So thank you, everybody who put forward your nominations. And don't forget, guys, there's always next week. So before we head into the weekend, just a reminder to check out our website at www.layoftheland.online. Our Facebook page is at Lottle's site. Our YouTube channel right here at the Israel Brief. Help us grow our community by liking, sharing, subscribing, following, doing all the things you need to do on social media. We're on X at Lay of the Land 5. We're on Instagram at Rolene_Marks. On LinkedIn at Rolene Marks. And guys, God bless you all. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. And Shabbat Shalom. And I will see you again on Monday. Bye for now.